Good afternoon, evening, or whatever. I never know what's the difference between afternoon and evening in English, okay? So, anyway, we are going to deal now with lesson 7. And lesson 7 is about the organizational support of strategic implementation. This part of organizational support deals with 4 different points, but I am going nearly to fly over one of them, which is human resources management. So the first part will be about the organizational structure. We are going to analyze it in this video. The next one is about the role of leadership, okay? And strategy and human resources management, we are going to fly over it. Why? Because you have got a full subject called human resources management. So there's no point in getting deep into something you are studying completely in a specific subject. And finally, we are going to pay some more attention to the organizational culture of the firm. But in this first video, in this first part, let's deal with the organizational structure. Well, first of all, remember please that we are studying the organizational support of a strategic implementation. So, if you remember, in lesson 6, dealing with the implementation, there were two parts in the 7S's model. The first one was organizational support, and I told you, okay, we are going to deal with it in lesson 7. Here we are. So, we are going to consider some of the 7S's, which are structure, okay, style, so management and leadership, then staff, people, human resources management, and organizational culture, which is shared values. These 7S's forcing everything. Okay, so first of all, organizational structure. If we are going to analyze the organizational structure of a firm, we need to know what is the organizational structure. Mintzberg stated in 2007, and much before, in fact, in many other articles and books, okay, that the organizational structure defines how people are organized or how their jobs are divided and coordinated. So how people are placed in different divisions, in different areas, in different groups or teams, so that they work in order to deal with all the stuff that the company has to develop. Okay, so how you place people inside teams, inside groups, inside divisions, inside units in an organization, and which is the relationship between these people and these units and so on with the rest of other ones. Okay, so the organizational structure is obviously a relevant part of the organizational support of the implementation, okay, because it's part of the internal context where the companies make decisions. So if you remember, when we considered feasibility, feasibility meant that we had to choose a strategic course which was possible for the company. And this feasibility was influenced by the organizational structure. Sometimes some strategies are not feasible for a company because they won't easily fit their people or their structure. Okay, so which is the relationship between the structure and the strategy of a firm? Well, first of all, let me tell you, the structure conditions the strategy. This is not the main relationship, but this is a relationship. What's the meaning of this? Well, when we are deciding the strategy of a company, it's decided inside a company, with a structure, with a power balance. This structure, this power balance, will influence the strategy of the firm. What do I mean by this? Okay, in a company where power is mainly centralized in the top executives of the company, they are going to make the majority of the decisions, so the strategy will come from this top management level always. But in a company, let me say an architecture office, for instance, okay, where power is more distributed amongst the people, okay, amongst project leaders and so on, well, these people will influence the strategy followed by the firm. So that's it. The structure will influence the strategy. But mainly, and this is the main relationship of influence, the strategy influences the structure. What's the meaning of this? Well, when we have to choose a strategy for a company, sometimes we will have to change the structure of the company. The fit between the structure and the strategy is critical for the performance of a company. So if we have to change the strategy, normally there's going to be a mismatch between the strategy and the structure, so we will have to change the structure afterwards. Why do we know? Well, we know that because Chandler, and this name is important, Alfred Chandler studied the relationship between the organizational structure and the strategy of a company. So he studied which had been the path of strategic development and the path of organizational structure of the main American companies along 40 years. And he discovered three things. Well, I am going to explain them in a funny way because I am going to start with the first stuff, with the first point, then the third, and then the second. Okay? So, the first one. Structure follows strategy. What's the meaning of this? Well, a change in the strategy of a company will normally result in changes of its organizational structure. What I mean by this is that, you know what we said about strategic fit and strategic mismatch. There's a change in the environment of the company. The external and internal context changes. So the strategy is not profitable anymore or not sufficiently profitable. We need to change the strategy. We do change the strategy. Well, after changing the strategy, the current organizational structure does not fit this new strategy. So we need to change the organizational structure. So structure will follow strategy. First of all, we will change the strategy because there has been a strategic misfit, so we look for the strategic fit, okay? And then we will need to change the organizational structure because the old structure doesn't fit the new strategy, so there's going to be a mismatch. We need to look for organizational fit. Do you remember the graph about strategic fit and organizational fit? Yes, we first change the strategy, then we change the structure. That's it. Okay, the third point, and I move to the third point in order to make it more understandable, okay? Structural change is not immediate. It's not immediate because it comes from a process of misfit. What I say is that, no, it's not that I change the strategy and the very next day I change the structure. Well, this can happen. But normally what happens is that we change the strategy and we find that the old structure doesn't fit the new strategy. So we need to change the structure. So we change the strategy. There's a misfit. We reduce our profitability. So we say, okay, what's wrong? Because the strategy is right, what's wrong? Okay, I need to change the structure. And then I change the structure. Okay, so please remember that strategic fit comes before organizational fit. And the third thing, well, the second, when in the article of Alfred Chandler, okay, the second is that there is a predictable pattern of relationship between strategy and structure. What's the meaning of this? Well, there are different kinds of organizational structures that are more adequate for some kind of company strategies. So, for instance, if we are very diversified and we are present in many countries, normally there's a kind of a structure we are going to call matrix structure that will fit better than some others. There's a pattern, a predictable pattern of relationship between some specific strategies and some specific structures. Okay, if you look at this graph, at the graph which is under the photograph, under the picture of Alfred Chandler, okay, this graph belongs to an article delivered by Galbraith and Nathanson. Many people say Galbraith and Kathanjian, but in fact the original article is Galbraith and Nathanson. Okay, and look, they associate, this article associates the strategies. You see a growth in the size of the company, vertical integration, related diversification, with different kinds of organizational structures. So they analyzed the main assumptions of Alfred Chandler and they discovered that they were right. And especially they studied the second assumption. I mean, there's a predictable pattern between the strategy and the structure. So, first of all, structure follows strategy. We change the strategy. then we need to change the structure. This is not immediate. This happens after a misfit. And finally, there's a predictable pattern of relationship between strategy and structure. We are going to get a bit deeper, or we are going to insist in this second point immediately. Okay, but nevertheless, some problems or some limitations of the study of Chandler. Okay, Chandler just studied development strategies. Well, it's interesting because it's what we are studying in strategic management too. Not a big problem about this. Okay, but he didn't study competitive strategies. Okay, so just development strategies, corporate strategies. Okay, and primary structures. There are two levels of the structure. There's a primary level, which is the main areas and units of the organization, and then there's a secondary structure, which deals with how people are displayed inside these units. Okay, well, the original article of Alfred Chandler just studied development strategies and primary structures. Then the transition and pace from one stage to another is not stable or immediate. It's not okay after 6 months. No, depends on the company. Okay, and the third thing, changing the strategy and the structure does not always generate the performance we could expect. What I mean is that it's not just, well, I am going to change the structure and this will work perfectly and so on. Okay, no, I wish everyone would wish it would be like that, but this is business management. This is not maths. It's not like that. It's never like that. Some companies do some things and work. Some companies do some other things and don't work. Okay. Well, we said the primary structure, okay? The primary structure is the division of its activities into the main organizational units, okay? In order to give support to the corporate strategy. This is what Chandler studied, and this is what we are going to analyze. When we divide a company into units, there are two main sets of criteria we can use, okay? Procedure and purpose. What do we mean by procedure? When we divide a company in units by procedure, what do we mean? We mean functions. What do we mean by functions? Well, the main functions, the main purposes that a company fulfills. For instance, sales or marketing. Okay, this is a unit. Okay, this is by procedure. Human resources management, finances, operations, research and development, or something similar to this could be not functions, could be processes. For instance, corporate customer service unit, delivery unit, purchases unit, Okay, so this is dividing the company in units by procedure. By purpose. By purpose, we mean that the units of the company are created based on specific goals. What do we mean? For instance, based on markets. So Telefónica Latin America, Telefónica Europe, Telefónica Asia, Telefónica, okay, that's it. Okay, so different goals, different parts. Or products. Renfe considers this AVE unit, okay, high velocity unit, long distance unit, short distance unit, regional unit. That's based on the goal of the different units, okay? Also could be based on clients. And some banks divided by something which was called retailing bank and wholesaling bank, because the clients are not the same. Okay, so considering both possibilities, okay, and mixing them up, Guerras and Navas distinguish 4 kinds of strategies. Well, these 4 kinds of strategies are not distinguished just by Guerras and Navas. They are considered by many authors, in fact. Okay, so when we are not using neither a procedure nor a purpose division, I mean, all the people are all together in the organizational structure. We are not going to divide anymore. This is called simple structure. This, I'm going to tell you immediately, is typical of very small organizations. Imagine that we are using a procedure criterion. I mean, we are going to divide by functions or by processes, okay? but not a purpose criterion. This is called functional structure. On the other hand, the opposite situation. We are not dividing by procedure, but we are dividing by purpose. This is called divisional. Divisional structure. And finally, when we cross two criteria in order to organize the resources and the people of the company, this is called matrix structure. Well, we are going to get a bit deeper into this. Okay, simple structure. Simple organizational structure. No criterion is used. All the people are put together inside the same organization. The power is very centralized. There's a direct supervision of the people, and the organization is highly informal. I mean, Manolo do this, Paco do that, and Elena do this. Okay, that's it. So there's no distance. There's a low specialization of the workers. I mean that normally the workers can do anything. There's not someone who does this, so normally all the people do everything, okay? And so the information system is basic. This is very typical of small organizations, of small firms. Imagine a company where there are just 3 workers and a boss who is normally also the owner, okay? This is very typical of small firms. And well, in fact, work is more divided by, okay, we have got this, who is going to take care of this, okay? So, in fact, normally, as it is very typical of small firms, normally this is also related with segmentation or differentiation competitive strategies, but need not. Never forget that we are mainly dealing with corporate strategies. But look, when we are focusing or we are looking for differentiation, normally companies are smaller, okay? Well, next possibility, functional organizational structure. Well, the people are displayed in units by procedure, normally by functions, marketing people, production people, research and development people, okay? There could be some interrelated functions, okay? Which are included in specialized units which serve all of the rest of the units. This empowers efficiency. I mean, if there are people who are going to be useful for marketing, but also for production, but also, for instance, human resources, okay? Human resources management. Well, they are included in a function, in a unit, which is different from the others and is going to serve all the others. There's going to be a need for coordination about this, okay? Normally, this is carried out by low diversified companies or related diversified companies. So we are not dealing with many products and not many markets. So I am going to divide just what I said. Finance people, okay, or financial controllers and so on. Production people, So this is also typical of companies which are normally small. But look, can be not so small, but can be big companies but not present in many markets and don't have many different products and so on, okay? This functional strategy is also called U-form, and I am going to explain it after considering M-form, okay? Because the next one is divisional structure. Okay, in divisional structure, we divide the company into units by products or by markets, by purpose. So it's like having many firms in one. Each firm could be independent. I mean, Telefónica Latin America could separate from Telefónica, and in fact, if you have read it in the news, they have considered selling, well, they have had an offer for Telefónica Latin America presented by some Latin American businessmen and so on. So you could separate each division from the company, and the company would go on, and that division would go on, okay? So the thing is that, imagine, can you separate the marketing department of a company and the marketing department will go on working? No, because the marketing department tries to sell for the rest of the departments. I mean, these functional areas have got no sense isolated. But the divisions in the divisional structure have got a sense isolated. It's like having many companies in one altogether. This is very typical for highly diversified companies, and it's called M-form. M-form stands for multi-form, and U-form stands for unitary form. And this is what I said about U-form means that you have got a company with functions that have got no sense separated. They cannot be separated. But M-form is like having many companies in one. Okay, it's a multi-form, many companies in one. Finally, we have got the matrix structure. Matrix structure mix procedure and purpose criteria simultaneously. So there are two lines of authority. Okay, so we can have telephonical item, and inside telephonical item we have got marketing, production, Okay, the problem about this is that these two authority lines might crash. I mean, so the people of marketing of telephonical item have to fulfill the expectations of telephonical item itself or of marketing itself. There are two criteria together. Okay, obviously this kind of matrix structure tries to profit from the advantages of the U form and the M form, but the fact is that sometimes it gets the complications of both. Okay, so this is done when there are two relevant dimensions, so we have to consider how to allocate the resources and the people and so on, considering these two relevant dimensions. Obviously, this is complicated and needs to use a complex information system. Finally, I am going to explain you something about network of virtual organizations. This, in fact, is not a company, but it's a network of specialized firms. Imagine many small companies which are specialized on something, and they are cooperating together when they need it. Do you remember this? Yes, we studied it in cooperation management. Do you remember this network organization, this network cooperation strategies? Okay, yes, this organizational, interorganizational networks. Okay, it's this, virtual organizations. So small organizations that are sticking to their core competences. Each one of them is specialized on something, and whenever they need to cooperate, they do. Okay, and this is called network organization or virtual organization. It's a more modern way of organizing, and it's based on vertical de-integration. So each small company sticks to the point and gets specialized on something. Well, this was the hardest part about the organizational structure, and then we're going to study the rest of lesson 7.